if you see it on my appraisals, my actual name is James. I've been doing appraisals since 2003, full time. Like I never stopped. I'm from Upper St. Clair. I grew up in the South Hills, but I lived in California, and I started my appraisal career out in Los Angeles through some connections that I had in Pittsburgh, because there's deep appraisal routes running through Pittsburgh that a lot of people don't really know about. And yeah, so 17 years of all residential. I don't do commercial appraisals. I've never upgraded my license past like certified residential. I haven't felt the need to at this time to like expand my career or anything. It's been enough so far.
And do you just do conventional appraisals, or are you also doing govs?
Like I don't do VA appraisals. I do FHA and USDA appraisals, but like VA appraisals, there's only 1 or 2 appraisals per area. There's like a geographical region the government sets up, so it's very difficult to become a VA appraiser. I've never even attempted to.
That's okay. So I think a lot of people and a lot of agents give FHA a bad rap, even though like a lot of clients are better served by it. And you know, they want to take everyone conventional. And, you know, sometimes I see these houses and they look like dilapidated trap houses, and we're trying to take them conventional. So maybe you could just get into a little bit of, you know, people I feel like are trying to squeak these houses by that are not even conventional friendly. So what are some like safety concerns that would get flagged on a conventional report?
Well, like something I would say about this whole like conversation is that it's changed a lot over the last 5 years or even 10 years. That FHA guidelines used to be a lot more strict. Over the last, they've reduced them to the point where it's very similar to a conventional, and there aren't really that many guidelines anymore. And I'd say, and when it comes down to it, after doing tons of reviews and seeing different appraisals from different appraisers, you realize that different appraisers are calling out different things that may or may not even be FHA guidelines. I've been doing for like a 3-year window calling something out to find out it wasn't even a guideline.
Okay.
Not anymore. This is like 15 years ago, but I mean that's the reality of it, is that there's things that people are calling out, they may or may not even actually be guidelines at this time.
And things are always constantly evolving. I think we've all seen this through the last couple of months, especially with COVID. So it's always good to get refreshed on your knowledge, whether it's lending or appraisals or whatever y'all realtors are doing. I know you guys have a billion forms to fill out now. So, you know, FHA is really not that bad, but it's just something that we've kind of all trained ourselves to think, oh, there's an FHA offer, we're probably going to have repair. You know, and in this market, I mean, I have clients making offers $25,000 over. I'm calling the list agent. They have all their documents in. We're ready to go, and they're still not getting it. So then we're waiving appraisal contingencies. But what does this do to the appraised values in the market, and what are you seeing personally with your report?
Like with the contract prices that are much higher than the listing prices, like 20 over. It's doing like a lot of different things, but one thing I will say is it takes a lot of time to watch this play out, because if like I was an appraiser in the 2005-2006 credit bubble, which had a similar situation, only it existed over like 3 to 5 years. And so like it will have an effect on the market, and depending on how like market participants, appraisers and agents like handle it on the way in, will like how it will show up coming out. So like situations like I worked with an agent recently who had a purchase, and the purchase price, they listed it at $140,000. The purchase price ends up being, because of multiple offers, $160,000.
Right.
12.5% over the price they predicted going into the deal. Like, and I realize that there's the situations where agents list properties on Fridays to drive up offers and things of that nature, but like, they are a professional going into it, and they're setting a list price. So like, if that agent legitimately thought that market value on the 140, 160 deal was 160, they should have listed it at 160 to begin with.
Right. So we know that these aren't always necessarily going to appraise. So if we're paying cash over that asking price, which is what we're seeing in a lot of the contracts coming over now, that's going to have an effect on the market value though in your comparables, right? Down the road, not immediately.
Down the road, it will. And then what it will also do is it cause increasing values, and then which will make these sub markets increase maybe in ways that are proper or not, because what it can end up doing is pricing people out of like certain neighborhoods when that neighborhood was like a starter neighborhood, and now like it becomes more limited because of this situation. And one of the things that I question right now, because we don't really know because of COVID-19, is like, is this like naturally occurring, these increasing values, or is this some sort of like bottleneck scarcity that people are sitting in their homes trying to buy these properties, and like they're imagining their kids in certain bedrooms and like throwing extra money at it that they don't actually have.
Right.
Obviously a cash buyer might, but that most of these, the ones that come to me, all have loans, and the people don't actually have, they're offering a certain amount over a price, but they don't actually have that money themselves.
Yep. Yeah, and I think you'll see a mix of that. I know with the clients that I'm personally servicing, and I'm sure other great lenders out there are doing, you know, they are making sure that their clients have that money in the bank over the initial sales price, just to cover them, and they're willing to waive their appraisal contingencies per the contract and pay that cash at closing. So that's why I was asking that question.
Yeah.
So another thing that comes hand in hand with not making appraised values is lovely reconsideration of values. I'm sure appraisers love getting those requests. I think I've gotten 1 out of 10 over the last 2 years. So how do you guys handle that, and how can we win more reconsiderations of value?
I think this is a good question. Some of the first things, like on the first thing that I consider, like as an appraiser on a reconsideration of value, is like, as the appraiser has already prepared his appraisal, you're not necessarily calling them out, but you might be saying, I don't think that necessarily you use the best comparables, and that there might be market data out there that does justify it. But on one hand, it has to really be there, because for an appraiser will make an adjustment. It's very easy, and like there's nothing wrong with it. If they recognize that some other professional in this industry has presented me with market data that is as good or better than what I used, I should make this a stronger report and make adjustments. It does happen all the time.
So my other question for you is, with the adjustments, for example, this is a West Virginia appraisal, so I know you're not licensed in that state, but it could happen anywhere. I had a client that was refining with a different financial institution before me. The house came in at 170. The bank was like this little hodunk bank, couldn't provide the forms to get it transferred, so we had to order a second appraisal. The second appraisal came in $2,500 lower. We used the comps from the first appraisal report to make our case, and the adjustments were way off. So that's kind of where it comes down to. This is the opinion of the appraiser, or how does that?
This is a great point, because there is a gray area with appraising. It's mostly mathematical. We're held to certain criteria that are mathematical, but in the end, there is a gray area that's considered art. And I've thought about this like many times, because imagine you have 2 houses on the same street that are literally like maybe model matches, and one is selling for 200 and one's selling for 202, and they're model matches with different lot sizes. And on one appraisal, you used $1 per square foot, and it comes in at $201,000, $1,000 over the purchase price, and you're like, that's dead accurate. And this model match on the same street, if I use the exact adjustments, it brings it into like 202,000, 1,000 below that purchase price. And as an appraiser, should we sit there and stick to those adjustments? I used it on this street, same house, or should I, or is that where like the gray area of art comes into it, where you will say, oh, for this appraisal, this is going to be 50 cents per square foot on this, and it meets the purchase price.
Okay.
So like that there's a reality there. There's a chance to be justifying your adjustments mathematically, and if your feet were put to the fire, you would maybe need to do that and be called out to do that. But in appraising, what I just described, you could call a sensitivity study. And on this appraisal, $1 per square foot is the right one, and on this one, 50 cents is the right one, and they're literally the same house in the same street.
So then let's touch on that even a little bit further. So a lot of people don't know that, you know, in addition to you guys being held to your own set of standards and looking at the comparables, there's also another layer of risk, which Fannie Mae has brought into the workspace over the last couple of years, and that is a collateral underwriting score. And I'm sure that you guys get a lot of questions on this. So you know, how do you kind of handle revisions when a collateral underwriting score comes in low or high to justify your values?
It's on an appraisal by appraisal basis.
Okay.
And to be honest, at certain times you see more of that, and other times not so much at all. And like that isn't actually something I've dealt with a lot lately. But the one idea that people state amongst appraisers in the appraisal industry is that, in give or take a few offices that have multiple appraisers, that every appraiser is on an island. That there's like certain decisions and ideas based, like the adjustments we were talking about, that is coming down to individually only to that appraiser and like how they do their job.
Okay. And I mean, I've seen that too. And I've actually spoken with appraisers like after the fact, even though I'm not supposed to do that. I know, slap on the wrist. But they're, you know, they have a personal belief that a certain neighborhood is overvalued, and they're bringing those values in under contract to keep like the inflation from happening. Is that ethical?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I've never done that or seen that, because this is what I say in the end. Say on that deal that I was talking about, that it listed at 140 and it ends up with a contract at 160. As an appraiser, you have to use the market data. You like as me as an appraiser, like the purchase price might be 160 and it might have started at 140, but like the actual data in this market saying 152, and I can't go any higher than that. And that it's something that I learned in my time in Los Angeles during the credit bubble of like the early 2000s, is that people in that situation are proceeding at the highest defensible value. That appraiser is going to be, if he is called out on this, he needs to produce data. This is why it is not at that, because certain appraisers and loan officers would be like rubber stamping situations like this, which is what you had in like Nevada, the whole West Coast, California, which is why we had ridiculously increasing values like 15 years ago.
So let's talk about that too. So, you know, you've lived through a credit bubble. I've only been lending since 2014. So I got in as things were starting to upswing. How do you personally feel about what's happening with values? Do you think that we're going to see a bubble in Pittsburgh, or do you think that, you know, this is just natural inflation?
I do. I think this is just short term from COVID-19. And I think
Okay.
that this is like pretty much the same market that we've seen for a few years, minus this like 2 to 6 week hiatus that realtors couldn't go out.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think too that you're having the low interest rates coupled with the bottlenecking, and that's why we're seeing like a delayed spring buying season. Like this is our normal market in April. We're just having it in June and July.
Definitely.
And we're going to see it go until a little bit later of the market. So does anyone have any questions for Jay? I think you've answered all of mine. I mean, the biggest one was the FHA. And I think that if we can, you know, as people that work in our communities, we need to educate for the best financial interest of our clients that, you know, FHA appraisals aren't that scary. You're going to get conditioned for things on a conventional loan as well. Like you can't have a flooded basement.
You could. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Han, maybe you could kind of tell people the most things that you call out on FHAs. Obviously, some sellers allow us to go and have like our buyers go and do the work before, some of them not due to liability, but we try to sometimes guess. Obviously, I have a better idea because I've been in this game with you for a long time, but most real estate agents don't. So maybe you could give them some sort of the most standard things like cracked chipped paint, those items. And
great question, dear. All agents should be like up on these standards. It's to eliminate all of their own confusion. That once you know what they are, obviously GFCI outlets is like one of the biggest ones. Chipped, cracked, peeling paint from prior to 1978, lead-based paint is another huge one.
So if we have cracked paint and the house was built after 1976, are you going to flag for that?
No.
I didn't even know that.
You only have to before 1978 because there was lead in paints prior to that. Any kind of safety hazard, which could be anything, but if it's legitimate safety, and around here we have so many retaining walls. Any steps that are 3 steps high have to have a railing. There's many retaining walls in people's yards on the side of their homes and like porches and things around here that may get called out because it's 3 steps high. If an old person fell off, we have ice. Because of ice, people fall a lot, and things that in other areas might not get called out. Like that 3-step rule is like more serious here, I think, because there's more places that people can fall from.
I've actually had appraisers call lead-based paint and, you know, corrections when the house was built after 1978. And I never understood that.
They remember, I don't know if you were on earlier, but like I said this earlier, there's appraisers who might be calling out things that aren't actually FHA guidelines anymore. That one obviously is, but the paint after 1978, it shouldn't even be acknowledged.
So what are some standard repairs, to just go on that a little bit deeper? What are some standard repairs you're seeing with conventional appraisals then too? Just so people aren't like, you know, this is like, we can
mostly things like related to water damage from like leaky sinks and bathrooms that come through a ceiling, or foundation issues that like are letting water into a basement. I'd say that is one of the main things because of all the water we have around here.
What about roofs? I see that come up on quite a few appraisal reports too, especially in our older neighborhoods.
Almost never on a conventional.
Okay.
And like, unless it would have to be very clear. And on an FHA appraisal, you have to go into the attic to take a photo to justify the interior of the attic to show whether or not there is moisture. So like it's that I don't see roofs being called out much.
Jay, Matt asked, what are where the standards are for reference? Do you have like a availability for like an FHA checklist online? Is there anything in the HUD handbook?
There definitely are.
Okay.
And they change a lot, like we were saying, because the FHA guidelines keep changing. So as of like currently right now, I might not have one documented that I go to all the time, but they're definitely out there. Like if you Googled it, it would be very easy to find.
Matt, I'll pull up the FHA handbook and I'll send you a link to it, and you can click through it chapter by chapter, and it'll have a collateral section. Even if
someone did like 5 or 10 minutes of this research, they would also understand things that had been previously called out and are no longer. And I find that would help people a lot.
Okay.
Not only knowing what's current, but like what used to be, because they might still be getting called out.
And does anyone else have any other questions for Jay? Anyone else? One question. So let's talk about nasty list agents, because we've all experienced them. So, you know, what is good like appraiser courtesy, you know, to go walk in? Not that any of these agents on this call would ever be rude to you, but there are some like crab apples there that, you know, want to be rude to appraisers, especially for flagging things. So what's like a good like etiquette?
To be nice, and not to be like I don't. You do meet all kinds of agents, and certain ones show up like if you actually meet with them and are very prepared with like not necessarily like here's comps, and someone will ask you, do you mind if I give you comps? And like there's that whole angle, because an agent's absolutely allowed to give an appraiser anything they want.
Okay, so it's good.
Whether they use it or even look at it's a whole nother thing. But hypothetically, say you're an agent who just hands it to you and says, you know, I know you know what you're doing, and by the way, I happen to use these comps if you want to take a look at it.
You appreciate that, don't you, Jay?
I don't even appreciate it. It's because you're documenting what you saw going into this, and like the appraisers are going into all kinds of neighborhoods, and you might be from Mount Lebanon. This house is in Mount Lebanon, and you're maybe more of an expert on this submarket than the appraiser.
That's amazing.
He's an expert on Fannie Mae guidelines and FHA guidelines. And then you go into all these different neighborhoods, but you may have superior knowledge.
So be prepared and be nice. The other thing I want to ask you real quick is, so we ask, you know, people say all the time, well, I need to get my house ready to list. I want to finish this basement. I want to re-upgrade my kitchen. You're not going to get a dollar for dollar value on those repairs. So how do you guys, is there like a certain percentage that you work on, or is it just based on the finishes, quality of work? I mean, can you go into that a little bit?
It's based on the finishes and quality of work. And when you are looking at the appraisal and you're looking at the sales comparison approach, those are not dollar for dollar adjustments. Mm-hmm. So like this one house may clearly have like $75,000 more upgrades. It doesn't necessarily make it a $75,000 adjustment. They're like weighted in the market, like you're saying. And when I first moved here and started doing appraisals, I wondered the same stuff. And there is data out there that like on certain counties, certain sub-markets across the country, how much you should expect to get back for improvements.
Okay.
And almost across the board, this area, and this data is now 6 years old, but I just wanted to know this when I got back to Pittsburgh. It was like 60%.
Okay, so a good rule of thumb, we'll say 60%.
I've had that in the back of my mind since I read that.
Okay, and then I have one more question for you, then we'll let you go. They just keep popping in my little ADHD brain. So let's talk about collateral scores. Like a lot of people see on the report, like C5, C4, C1.
Conditions.
So, yeah, conditions.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't understanding because I call them ratings. And
yeah, okay, ratings. Sorry, I don't know if I was using the proper terminology.
C1 is a brand new home, has never been lived in. C2 is a brand new home because someone might have bought it 6 months ago and are refining it to get a new loan, or they put on a deck and finished the basement and they're refining it 6 months after buying a new property. That's a C2. And then C3 and C4 are really the ones that most agents deal with the most. Those are average properties, and C3 is an updated average property. It means there might be a new kitchen, maybe one of the bathrooms is redone, or all of them actually. It's an updated home, and a C4 would be like the same home with like less improvements.
And then a C5 is like what, a townhouse?
To live in it, it needs improvements. It's a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, and the whole bathroom has been gutted.
You're nice about it. Yeah.
It wouldn't and that would. Yeah, it would have to be conditioned. They would have to redo their bathroom and go back to see that it's completed because it wouldn't be livable without a bathroom.
And so to upgrade a C class, you could technically change a value and condition for, the repairs needed to be in a certain class, correct? Or right?
Definitely. It's gray. And that comes down to your appraisal and your comps. If these are like highly upgraded, it becomes a little bit gray of the difference between a C3 and a C4, depending on the comps.
Okay, cool. You have been stellar. My brain is just like swirling with so much good knowledge that when someone comes back to me and they're like, I want to fight for a reconsideration of value, I'm going to be like, we're not going to get it, or this is what we need to do to get it. And I think a lot of the agents on the call probably appreciate your knowledge as well. Jay, I'm not sure if you're on our panel yet. We should definitely add you if you're not, though. I'm sure we would love to have you. You seem very knowledgeable and nice, which is always welcome. And if you have a seller that like wants to get their home appraised, do you do that too ahead of time for people? Like, can you place an order on your website?
Very rarely. Okay. I was telling Dora this morning, personal appraisals, because those are not the users of residential appraisals. Banks are, loan officers are. So a personal appraisal is like someone who's done these upgrades and just wants like a document that's it's a headache for appraisers.
Okay. Well,
and it's almost a waste of, this is the way I see it. We're a real estate agent. We're professionals. We should be able to,
I would tell
like Jay said, market and research to know what we need to market our homes to sell and not go 20,000 under, so it causes problems for justification of value.
Right.
But it's almost a waste of money to have your seller pay an appraiser $500-600 for to get their home listed. I
just think you have a lot of people that want to overvalue their home, and that's when they ask for it because they don't trust you. Maybe.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
But I agree with you.
They are rare. I'm not sure how many other appraisers do, but I've done in 15, 17 years, maybe 10 at the most.
Okay, fair enough. Well, then we will pump that out there. Jay, I've recorded this whole call, so I'm going to post it on Facebook and my YouTube channel for those who maybe didn't get to see it. If anyone has questions, obviously we don't want to bombard you with them, but maybe someone's too embarrassed to ask. If they could email you, would that be okay with a specific example or something?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, thanks, guys. Thank you guys so much for all jumping on. I know it's crazy busy right now. And Jay, you're so appreciated for jumping on in the middle of June to do this for everyone.
No problem.
All right.
My pleasure.
Bye, y'all. Have a good day.
Bye, Katie.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.